What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Jacked Ramsays pregame show. As always, I'm your co-host, Danny Marang, joined by Brandon Sprague and Gerald from Phoenix. What is the correct nomenclature for the new website that you guys have got going down in Phoenix?
Yeah, it's PHNX.
For anybody who's followed me as part of the pod, Adam Mares, the homie who started DNVR, obviously in Denver. This is a branch of that into another market loaded with guys that have been covering the league, and not just in the NBA. Obviously, you guys down in Arizona have all of the sports. Here in Portland, we do not. So that's kind of a thing. And I just said Gerald. Gerald Boucher is here, and I want to make sure I actually get his whole name in here. Brandon Sprague, Gerald Boucher, Danny Marang, Jacked Ramsays pregame show. We're going pregame here for the Phoenix Suns. It's going to be, I think, an interesting game. I was talking to Brandon earlier, and honestly to you, Gerald, about how the Blazers they're favored in this game.
Yeah, I think it's got to be. I was kind of surprised by that too. I'm guessing it's because the Suns are on the second night of back-to-back, but other than that, I don't know how to rationalize that otherwise.
Gerald, can I ask you, because watching their two games, they lose their home opener, they just clobber the Lakers in front of everybody. What Suns team do you think, where do you think they fall in their first two games? How would you gauge what they've done so far?
It's a very good question, because the first game was about as bad as we've seen the Suns team look in a while. They had very rarely performances like that on both ends where they just looked very lost and kind of out of sync. It wasn't like, I think the first 16 games of the season last year when they were trying to incorporate new guys, they looked like that every now and then, but it rarely happened. So you see that game, they get clobbered by Denver at home. But I think it meant more to Denver. Obviously, you know, the way that they were swept last year and adding insult to injury, like with the Suns and 4 guy and all of that stuff. Like that was a big game for the Nuggets. And I don't think the Suns were prepared to match that kind of intensity. I think they were prepared for that same type of deal against LA, another team they eliminated from the playoffs. And let's be honest, the Lakers they don't look like a good team right now. They've got a lot of things to figure out early on with new pieces. And so I think the Suns use that continuity and that motivation to their advantage.
I want to ask you, Gerald, about kind of, you alluded to it there with being ready for the particular game. And I don't mean this in like a negative sense. Do you think the Suns not necessarily overlooked Denver, but they know what they are kind of against Denver? And even though it's a big game and they knew, do you think that maybe there's an internal feeling with that team right now because of how far they went and how good they have been that, hey, we know where we stand with these guys, but what we didn't get to see really was us against the Lakers, and maybe they were looking forward and maybe looking past that Nugget team?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think, they're very big on their culture here. They're very big on focusing on just themselves. So I think, with Book coming into the season, missing most of training camp because he tested positive for COVID, and then, they eased him into practices. He only played one preseason game because it was a long summer for him with the Olympics and whatnot. I think they weren't fully in their groove. They had a couple of new guys to work in, but they were just kind of riding high on the continuity and like, we know who we are and what we do. And I think they kind of got caught, looking ahead a little bit or not respecting an opponent that is still a very good team, even without Jamal Murray. I think that's what happened. I'd be interested to see when they play the Nuggets a second time this season, how that goes.
Gerald, has anything stuck out to you in terms of guys' roles or the difference between what last year's team ended with? And again, it's 2 games, but like, have you seen any noticeable differences with the way guys have been playing this year?
I think Mikal Bridges' aggression is one thing that we'll be keeping an eye on moving forward. Obviously, like you said, it's only been 2 games, but he was their leading scorer in the first game, 16 points. He had 21 against the Lakers last night. He's been much more aggressive in looking for his shot off the dribble. And that's something we saw in spurts last year where he would, attack a poor closeout and pull up for that mid-range jumper. And he was actually really efficient from the mid-range, showed a lot of progress in that regard. He's always been a great finisher, a really smart cutter. So this is a guy that, like, if you go back and watch the Lakers game last night, like, LeBron fell asleep on him multiple times, and every single time Mikal Bridges made him pay for it. So it's one of those things where opposing defenses, they're obviously going to focus in on Devin Booker and Chris Paul because why wouldn't you? But like, if you're paying too much attention to those guys, I feel like this is the year where Mikal Bridges is going to be the one that makes you pay for it.
All right, first off, welcome everybody who's showing up right now. We're here with Joe J of PHNX. That doesn't roll off the tongue quite yet. I need to have you guys around more. If you haven't already, check out the website. They're doing awesome stuff down there. Like I said before, Adam Morris and the crew got it started with DNVR, and it's kind of migrated down southwest. And I know most of the guys that work for both sides, and they all do excellent work, Gerald included. If you haven't already, please subscribe here to the channel. Help if you're interested in anything that's going on down in Arizona. Subscribe over there or over in Denver. Like I said, those are all friends, and they're all good dudes, and they all put out good content. So as we kind of look forward to tonight's game, as we bring people on for pregame, one of the things I really want to focus on asking people, particularly here early in the year, is what do you expect from this Portland Trailblazers team?
I mean, I feel like I'm probably on the same page as a lot of Blazers people that watch the team and cover the team. I'm not a whole lot more. I feel like I wasn't a big fan of some of the offseason additions that they made, or at least I didn't feel like they did enough to tangibly raise their ceiling. You know what I mean? Like, this is still a playoff caliber team. I think this is still a good team that you're not going to be able to just steamroll on a night-to-night basis, because, you know, any team that has Dame Lillard is going to be, they're going to have a fighting chance on a night-to-night basis. But I don't feel like this is the team that, like, based on Damian Lillard wanting to see change, wanting this front office to do more, I don't feel like I saw that. And I'm not, you know, we've heard Dame say, I'm not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome for Blazers fans. I'm very happy for them and for him that he has such ties to the city that he's willing to do that. I feel bad because when the adversity hits, I don't know that this team has enough to, you know, get out of the first round, let alone make the type of run that he wants.
Is it weird to cover and talk about them right now, considering there's some big bombshell thing that they got way out in front of and we still don't really know the details of, but they basically said, hey, don't rush to judgment on the racism and the sexism stuff. Like, is it kind of odd that that's looming and the coach and the players don't talk about it, but the GM sends a message out? Like, what's that been like?
Yeah, I mean, the last few days have been a nightmare, honestly. Like, we just got past the DeAndre Ayton stuff as far as him not getting his contract. And we had known, most of us here in Phoenix media, that this story was coming. We didn't know when, we didn't know what the extent of it was, but we knew that it had to do with Robert Sarver and that it was supposed to be pretty bad. We're going to wait until we get the facts, until we read the story, until we speak on it, because that's just, you know, these are very serious allegations. It is interesting that the Suns lashed back that quickly and that hard with the statements that they released. You know, Monty was saying, like, I'm not going to speak on it either until we know what the facts are. I'm focused on getting W's and, you know, all the coach speak that you can have. And the players said the same thing. So it's one of those things where we're all just kind of waiting for the bomb to drop here, and we'll go from there.
Is it, this is going to, I don't want you to misinterpret the way I asked this question, because obviously if any of this stuff coming out is true, it's god awful. Is there like a part of Suns fans though, it's like, maybe we can finally get rid of this dude as the team owner because of how frustrating he's been?
Yeah, there were a lot of Suns fans that were excited at the prospect of the league forcibly removing him, depending on how bad these allegations are, because, you know, we saw with Donald Sterling, if these allegations are very serious, racism, sexism, and sexual harassment, that's a big trio there. I feel like there is a lot of excitement at the prospect of getting him out because, you know, Suns fans just don't like this dude. You know, again, we're going to wait and see what these accusations are, because as bad as a human being as Sarver is, we don't know what's in that article yet. But we'll go from there. Apparently there are a lot of sources that were cited in this report, and it's as bad. That's what Jordan Schultz said. He was on one of our local radio shows. He said, as bad as you think it is, it's worse. So I guess we're going to wait and see until I think Tuesday or sometime midweek when it drops.
Yeah, I'm not going to drop the reporter's name because it's his story to break, but I know who's writing it, and they are about as sourced as they get. When they write something, it's not something that's a tabloid rag situation. So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of develops. as far as you alluded to it a little bit, and it's kind of weird. It was the biggest story before all of this was the lack of contract extension for Deandre Ayton. Mikal Bridges gets his money. Campaign gets his money in the offseason. I mean, guys started piling up. You had Shamet get his money. Is there a looming situation where things could go from the Suns are back, baby, to oh crap if this doesn't kind of go away?
And also, real quick, Gerald, can I add to that? Why didn't they pay him?
Yeah, I think the one thing that James Jones said in that Athletic article was that we talked about 3 or 4 year maxes, but we didn't want to go the full 5. I don't understand that rationale. It was also mentioned that he wanted to, because you can only have 2 of these designated rookie max deals on your roster at a given time. So he didn't want to use the other one. Devin Booker already has one. He didn't want to use the other one on Ayton and not be able to make a trade for another player on a designated max. But in my mind, if you're making a trade for that kind of star player, I feel like Ayton would almost have to be involved in that kind of deal. So I don't know. It was basically, we don't think this guy is worth the max in a vacuum. We need to see more of what he did during that eye-opening playoff run consistently, because even as recently as like March or April of the regular season, he was getting benched in fourth quarters because he couldn't stay on the floor. So like he really flipped that switch and showed Suns fans what they've been waiting to see for him for forever in the playoffs. I think from management's perspective, they were like, we want to see it to make sure that he can do it consistently and that this wasn't just the playoff run of a lifetime, which again, I have a hard time accepting that because he's 22 years old. He's only going to get better. Other teams, like as soon as MPJ got his 5-year max, like Ayton's people were never going to take less.
No.
So his market value set his new price line. The Suns weren't willing to meet it. And now we've got this situation that's hanging over our heads. And you've got a guy who coming into the season literally said, I don't really care for my big man role. Like I want to, he's been saying, I want to shoot threes. I want to do more on offense. Like I want to expand my skill set basically, which
I sacrificed for the team, but I want to do more.
Yes, exactly. And that's kind of the first time he's overtly mentioned that he's sacrificed, which, that's agent speak for sure, like pay me basically. But it'll be interesting to see because Monty now has to walk this balance where what's best for the Suns offense is not Ayton like launching a bunch of threes or, getting a bunch of ISO possessions, but you also have to keep him happy if he's going to sacrifice and do what he needs to do defensively for this team to win. So
what's their weakness right now? Like when you looked at the roster going into the year and you evaluate it now, because Portland comes in, we know they can be pretty efficient with their offense. What's the Suns' weakness right now?
Honestly, it sounds like cocky to say it, but their weakness is probably beating themselves. Like sometimes they just run out of focus. I feel like
showing up to the game, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they've got especially after a first finals run and a shortened off season, like they're going to be dealing with fatigue, emotional, physical, mental fatigue this year. They know that the ultimate prize is at the end of the season. So there might be nights where they're just kind of cakewalking or running through the motions a little bit. But they really do have one of the most like complete rosters, deepest benches in the league. I feel like it's one of those things where there's a very short number of teams that could beat them when they're playing at their best. Because they are just a very good two-way team on both sides of the ball. They're very efficient. They have a really good offense that shares the ball, a really good defense that can cover. I think their point of attack defense could use some work. They're a very good scrambling defense, but they do kind of get beat off the wing a little bit. But yeah, it's like the Bucks are probably the only team, maybe the Nets at full firepower, but we don't know what's going to happen with Kyrie. So
yeah,
those are kind of the only 2 teams that I feel like could beat the Suns in a 7-game series at their best right now.
When you're looking at this Suns team, what would a disappointing season look like?
I feel like probably anything less than a championship, honestly.
It's that high because of that finals run?
Not even back to the finals and people are good with that?
Yeah, no, I think because last year they were up 2-0 in the finals. Like all the stars were aligning for this team to finish off this magical season. Like first time back in the playoffs in 11 years, first time Devin Booker's in the playoffs, Chris Paul finally getting over the hump. Like everything felt like it was aligning, and then they lost 4 games for the first time all year long. They hadn't lost 4 games once all season. They had only lost 3 in a row once before that. Like it wasn't a collapse, but they just got beat 4 straight times like that. And so I think for everyone here, knowing how close they were, knowing that Chris Paul's window is not going to be open for too many more years, like the time is kind of now. So anything less than getting over that hump, especially addressing some of their weaknesses with the roster in the summer, like I feel like it would be a little disappointing if they didn't get over the hump this year.
Well, and I would imagine too, back to the earlier question about maybe did you overlook Denver getting ready for LA? I'd imagine though, beating a team like the Lakers, who, you know, many out there think if they're healthy, maybe Phoenix doesn't get past the Lakers last year. I'd imagine beating them thoroughly in LA, causing rifts between AD and Dwight on the bench, getting in LeBron's head about campaign, like all of that stuff has to matter a lot for this team, right? Still young and kind of looking to prove it with a chip. And you go out there and you beat a team who's clearly coming for the throat and they have all that experience.
I think so too. I think this team relishes being an irritant in some of these like established teams' eyes. Like you look at the Lakers, it's kind of like the old generation, right? You've got like LeBron, Carmelo, Dwight Howard, like this generation of stars that some of these guys grew up watching, and they are like forcibly removing them from the stage right now. I think they enjoy doing that. Like you saw Devin Booker rockabye babying after Westbrook did it to him. Like
loved it.
Yeah. They're just ultimate trolls. They love that role, and they love, like, we don't care that you think we're frauds or that we got an easy road to the finals or whatever. Like, we're still going to beat your ass if you like don't bring it. So that's what they do.
Personifying Suns in 4 guys is a good thing. I know some people are like, oh, maybe stay away from that. And I'm just like, no, lean into it. It's okay to lean into kind of being the villain, because let's be honest, Chris Paul is a villain. Devin Booker, little bit of a villain. Bridges probably
Crowder's for sure a villain.
Crowder's for sure a villain.
That dude is a thorn in a lot of people's sides.
There's a lot, like Bridges, I think, is got a universal approval rating. Ayton, I think there's some people that maybe are a little less or a little more ambivalent about, but there's a lot of villains on this team, and you need a villain type team, because you look at Portland, and I think from the outside looking in, it was, oh, it's Damian Lillard team, it's cute, it's fun, it's Lillard time. No, you need a team full of a-holes. Like it's you have to have those storylines, and I want to kind of get you out of here this because we've got Monty's pregame availability coming up. When you're looking at this game tonight, what do you expect from a game that? I mean, they played each other in the preseason, and Portland looked like a flaming dumpster fire floating down a river, falling into a black hole. I mean, they looked as bad as they could look.
It sounds awful.
It was. Yeah. I mean, it in the dumpster fire, like, was straight out of a nursery. It was bad. What do you expect this game to? How do you expect it to progress tonight?
I expect it to be a little bit more competitive than that, because that was giving me vibes to. I'm sure you remember a few years ago when the Blazers opened in Phoenix, and they beat them by like 48 points or something like that. And that was, I think, 2 games later, that's when Eric Bledsoe tweeted, "I don't want to be here anymore." Like, and that's how that preseason game against the Blazers recently, it reminded me of that. It was like, yeah, it was like, wow, we've come full circle. Obviously, preseason doesn't really matter, but I do.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you. Thank you, Gerald. Another one.
Yeah, I know. You had to give him some.
I had to give him something, yeah. But yeah, I feel like it'll be a little bit more competitive, but I've still got Suns possibly by double digits. Maybe it'll be closer because second night of a back-to-back. But yeah, I just feel like this is not a good defensive Portland team. And I feel like the Suns are the type of team that really takes advantage of that type of thing.
Let me ask you real quick before we get you out of here, Gerald. What team in the West is the worst matchup, in your opinion, for them?
For the Suns or for the Blazers?
For the Suns. Well, there's a lot of team for the Blazers. We know that.
That one, you just roll a set of dice and you come up and you're okay.
Maybe 7 to 10 teams. Which team in the West for the Suns?
I would probably say, and this has the caveat of them actually needing to be fully healthy, but I would probably say the Clippers at full strength are the scariest team. You know, they still gave them problems without Kawhi Leonard. With Kawhi Leonard, that's a really tough matchup, and they have a lot of interchangeable guys. So that's probably the one matchup in the West that would scare me the most in a playoff series.
All right, man. I know you got to get out of here and get to availability. So go ahead and plug what you guys have got going on and what you got coming up and anything you got across social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do pregame and postgame live shows for any Suns fans that are listening to this. We do, 3 shows a week, 2 podcasts as well on top of that. And then I'm writing all my Suns content at gophnx.com. So feel free to check it out. Subscribe for membership. We've got a lot of cool merch and stuff too. A lot of neat t-shirt designs for Suns fans. So yeah, feel free to check it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Joe. Appreciate you. Go ahead and get out of here, buddy, and we'll catch up with you next time because I think we end up playing you guys again here. You guys, the Clippers, and I think the
Clippers
Lakers
and the Suns multiple times.
Yeah,
in
the first month. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. So we'll hopefully we'll be able to get you back around here. You take care, all right, buddy? Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Right. See ya. All right, Brandon. One of the things that we're looking at here, kind of going forward into tonight, is the recurring theme of love it, like it, leave it. What are you looking at tonight in this game as we're getting ready to take on the Phoenix Suns and a team that they didn't look great against the Nuggets. I kind of tend to think that they maybe looked past that game a little bit, and they were definitely looking towards that Laker game because of what it meant. But they beat the brakes off the Lakers last night, and the Lakers may be bad, but I tend to believe that this Suns team is really freaking good.
I think that was a bigger game for Phoenix than it was the Lakers. I know the Lake they look awful. I'm not ready to really throw in the towel because you never know what LeBron teams are going to do with deadline deals and or just rotations. Maybe they figured that out. That being said, you go back to that Denver game and there was a lot of juice and energy in that building. It's like, oh, we're the Western Conference champs, and here comes the team that we just swept. We punched their fans in the face. Like, you had everything lined up for you. And you completely, I really think they no-showed. And, it's the biggest deal in the world. It's a little troubling. Like, don't look ahead and look past some of these Western Conference foes. Jokic killed them. Barton gave them buckets. They could not contain MPJ. So they weren't perfect by any stretch. But I'm going to start with my leave it.
Okay.
My leave it it's fairly simple. Let's show up at the tip. Like, the first 5. Can you leave what you did in the last game, and can you just be ready to go once you tip that thing off? Because I might be sipping the juice a little too hard today. This might be insane. I think they're going to win tonight. I don't know why. I don't think they're better than Phoenix.
It's the Lillard factor.
Weird. There's a Lillard playing better factor. There's, you look at the line movement, kind of like they're favored. They're the favorite overall. It's kind of odd. I think they'll play a little better. But I'm going to start with my leave it. Do not have that same start that you had against Sacramento. If you do, you're going to get buried by Phoenix.
I'm going to go on the front end. I'm going to take the love it, and I'm going to go with that bench unit. Because if you get that performance from your bench unit and those starters are remotely, near their normal production line, this should be a team that is in this game. And I'm actually with Gerald. I think it's either going to be the Blazers are in this game or they're going to get housed. And it's not going to be because entirely of their defense. Their offense, that starting group offense, will look disjointed as hell. And it was like, well, they were a Lillard 3 away from pushing it to overtime. The Kings, they pooped all over themselves. The final 6 minutes of that game was Portland did a little bit extra defensively, but the Kings hurt themselves more than Portland helped them. And I'm wondering if that offense, I know the defense is going to take time. If anything is going to revert back to what it used to be, I don't think it's going to be the defense. I think it's going to be the offense because that's something they can rely on, that they can kind of use as a crutch to get the defense right. And so in order to do that, if the bench gets out there and does what they did in game 1, that makes it much, much, much easier to kind of fall back on that crutch and maybe try a few things, but if things go sideways, you can rely on Dame, you can rely on CJ, you can rely on Nurk to create some opportunities. So you've got your leave it, I've got my love it. Which way are you going to go with this next?
I'm gonna go to my like it, and I'm gonna like the young guys and Nas specifically. By the way, shout out Richmond. He had a great interview with Nassir. It was a fantastic listen. So I want to plug that because he's our homie. But I want to go with them as my like it. It's close to a love it, but I'm going to go with like it. I think this team, with the amount of veterans they have, when you get young guys that can come off, pop, provide that energy, give you that juice, I think that kind of like gets the vets going a little bit if struggling with that. And again, while that may not impact statistically, I think it just helps kind of the energy, the vibes of what the team is going through. So my like it is going to be Ant and Nas tonight. Coming off of that bench, maybe it's the same, Nas is first off, Ant's first off. To me, it doesn't matter. They're both going to play. And I'd imagine they actually get a couple more minutes tonight. So my like it is those two, because I think against Phoenix, they've got a mix too of veteran guys and younger players. You're going to need to be able to counter their young guys with your young guys. I'm
going to steal a little bit of yours here, both mentioning Richmond with his interview with Nas, which was great. But I'm going to go with one young guy. I'm going to go with Nassir Little. There was a point that Mike asked Nas about his role. Did you know you were going to come on the floor and guard De'Aaron Fox?
Yeah.
And Nas was like, nope. Not one bit.
That wasn't the scouting report.
No, and it was Damian Lillard saying, no, you got Fox. Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting, mostly because Dame was like, I'm not doing this crap. I'm not going to try and stay in front of Fox all night long.
They'd tire him out.
Yeah, and he looked at Nas, and Nas was like, okay, fam, I got you. And he went out there, and he hung with him. And guess what's going to happen tonight? Dame or CJ is going to have Devin Booker early. Norm's probably going to have Book to start, I would imagine. They'll put CJ on McHale, and that'll leave Dame trying to chase CP3 or CJ trying to chase CP3. Either way, either Dame or CJ is going to be running because they're going to be either on CP or they're going to be on Bridges, and both guys don't stand still. So,
I want to touch on something real quick. So he also was basically asked, did you watch the film and what did you think you needed to work on? Mm-hmm. And I thought his answer was real interesting, right? Because we graded these dudes on a 1 to 10 scale, and I can't remember what you said for Nas, but his answer was interesting to me. Basically said sometimes you look for a problem when there isn't a problem, and he thought he played.
We both gave him a 6.4,
right? And maybe we lowballed him because when he said that answer, I'm like, so the only difference would have been then for him to maybe get another bucket or two, because he was asked point blank, what can you be better in? He said nothing. Like that's his role, is to come in, be high energy guy who helps him defensively, and he's got his amount of minutes that he's going to play. I thought that was an interesting answer from him.
I think along that line, this is kind of why I said that line of like a 6.0. It's like that's meeting expectations, and I think that's what Nas did. And I think he went out in game 1 and he met expectations. He's got a different challenge tonight. Fox is a guy that gets downhill. His speed is otherworldly, and it bends defenses, and it does a lot of things to you. Book's a different beast. Book wants to get you off balance. He wants to come off screens, hit you with the jab. A little bit of Kobe in his game. I know everybody wants to call him. He does have a little bit in the sense of how he wants to attack you.
He loves those up fake, go into you, get a foul type things.
And I want to see how Nas handles, and not only that, Book's significantly bigger than Fox. I loved how they kept talking about Fox putting on that 10 pounds of muscle. And it was like, guys, Fox still weighs $190. I mean, him and Ant are about the same size on a scale. So Book's a significantly bigger dude. So I look at that matchup and I go, that's one of the things, as far as my like it, I want to see it. As far as let's see Nas get out there. We know he's going to get that assignment. Unless Chris Paul starts cooking or McHale starts cooking, he might end up going there. But I think we both agree he's probably going to end up spending a fair amount of time on Book.
And I really hope that he's really disciplined tonight, because Book is hard enough to guard, let alone deal with the kind of antics he's going to do to get you in foul trouble. I think Book knows he may not be the most well-known dude in the NBA. I think guys like Devin Booker are aware of younger players like Nassir Little who are athletic, lengthy, and a little bit of a problem. I hope he's disciplined, because I think I wouldn't be shocked if Book could try to get him into foul trouble, take him out of that game, ruin the rotation a little bit. It'd be very smart of Devin Booker. I want to give you my love it. My love it's pretty simple. It's Damian Lillard. I don't imagine Damian Lillard will play that level again. I can't fathom he'll be 0 of 9 from 3. And that's kind of why I'm sitting here going, I don't know why, but I like him. It's not a, I think they're a different team. They show us. I think largely they're going to kind of be this up and downish team. But I think tonight is going to be Dame dictating terms and getting his, while also kind of contributing and distributing to the other surrounding members while they kind of work around him. I think Dame is going to be my love it, because I think he's going to play substantially better. I'm going to go finish it here with my leave it, and it's going to actually bookend kind of what you said with your Damian Lillard. I want to leave the not shooting threes, because they got some volume threes in garbage time that ramped up their overall volume. And when I look back at it, and I watched the game back twice over the last 2 days, and one of the things I noticed is there were times when they had open looks from 3 where a year ago they were pulling. They were unquestionably, they were going to let it fly.
And I think that caused a lot of the disjointed stuff that we saw in the offense is you're trying to pass up the good shot for the great shot for the layup. I get all of that stuff, but it can't be every possession. It can't. They're too good of a three-point shooting team to just push that stuff to the side, and they're just not big enough to impose their will by getting down. I'm not saying that they need to change and bail on everything, but I want to leave the whole idea of we're not going to shoot as many threes. And I don't mean that because it's I know it's a contrast to what I think I've said on Twitter of like I don't want to see a game of 53s. I just want to see this team take and make the threes that they have been taking historically.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you about that because that's something I circled on my pregame notes to watch for is the threes. Because I noted in the postgame, Sacramento had one less shot total, but they had 6 more threes. They won that game by what, 3?
Yeah.
So like that's an area, and we remember we circled the Chauncey stuff. If we're gonna shoot less, do you think though that you watched a team actively say, "Don't shoot the 3, pass the ball"? Like
I do. I do think that they passed up. Watching it back, there was probably about half dozen possessions where I was like, it was like a little bit of a hesitation, that a little pull up, like I need to work this.
Yeah, and look, you might be right. That's why I'm going to really watch it tonight. I'm more so wondering if that's a mix of chaunts in their heads, or there's a lot of guys on this team that are expecting shots and points. And look, they all know there's a hierarchy to it. It's just a matter of when does that hierarchy come into play here. And I think sometimes you can get caught overpassing, overthinking situations. So while I will acknowledge that you look back and you see half a dozen possessions where maybe they passed up a 3, I want to watch tonight to see if they keep doing that and see if that's either being implemented or they're overthinking, hey, CJ hasn't had a look, or hey, Norm's open there, or let's get Rocco a look. You wouldn't want him just shooting one time and being the defensive guy. Like, I want to keep following that narrative because that was an interesting line when he dropped it in the offseason. And we already saw in the first game you shot 6 less than Sacramento.
Yeah, so it's definitely on the notepad of not necessarily make or miss, but the actions that follow or precede those things. That's what's more important to me right now. If we're going to give it this whole 20-game situation, I think it's what you have to kind of go with as you go. It's about the process, not the results right now. And I just 2 quick things, and we'll kind of get out of here and get everybody ready for the game. Second best says bet $20 in Dame scoring 29 plus. Here on that exact note, normally I would say absolutely unequivocally, and I'm not giving official betting advice. I'm just saying in matchup history,
Why can't you give us official betting advice? Everybody else is as qualified as you.
I'm just saying in general. I'm cashing it away for legal protection until.
You're right. Don't be a coward. Take my advice. Bet the house. Like just
Stone Cold Lead Pipe Luck.
My God, 5-star luck.
But the matchup, Damian Lillard against Chris Paul. Historically, Chris Paul has absolutely dominated Damian Lillard.
Yes,
it has been Dame's worst career matchup by miles.
But
however,
their
last 3 matchups, Dame has ramped up ever so slightly, and I think Chris has slowed down enough to where his first burst quickness no longer bothers Dame, or Dame not necessarily figured him out, but understands what he needs to do around Chris Paul. So
it's an age ladder thing to me.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of all comes together because God, it was a slaughterhouse masterpiece theater what Chris Paul did to Dame in like their first 20 matchups. It was awful stuff. Second part of this is the other part of this backcourt. We talked about CJ having a fantastic game 1, and as I watched back.
Well, we disagreed on that. But.
Well, I thought he had a fantastic game in the box score. I mean, typically you just see CJ score. Every now and then he'll get some assists. Every now and then he'll get some rebounds. His box score was fantastic. Shot the lights out from all levels, 30-plus points, 5-plus boards, 5-plus assists, 3 steals. You don't get that box score stat stuffing. But when I watched that game back, he got a couple of assists, but beyond that man stopped that ball more than Carmelo Anthony in his prime. It was...
How much of it was him feeling it, though?
I think in the second half, I think that was it. He was feeling it. In that first half, honestly, I think when we were talking about, again, it's establishing that pecking order, I think that was listen, I know you think that Norm's going to get more looks, Nurk's going to get more looks, Ant's going to get more looks. I'm here to tell you, they're not coming from my pockets. And
Yeah.
I felt a pretty strong
We
sense
talked
of
about
that.
this, didn't we
Yeah.
not? It was like, how is CJ going to compartmentalize all of these new changes in ball movement, right?
So that's on my notepad as far as like things to watch is who stops the ball, when does it stop,
Right.
and how long does it stop for?
Right.
Whether or not CJ is cooking, I think that's probably something you have to take into consideration. But normally he ended up with 9 looks last game. He was supposed to be, we were expecting about 13, 14, maybe 15.
No complaints, though. No complaints.
Again, we'll see how that goes. They said they wanted to get Ant a few more looks and a few more minutes. Do you think Ant plays more than 18 tonight?
I think Ant gets to 20.
I think the sweet spot's going to end up being about 23 for him for the season. 23, 24 is the line where he fits in a season. And,
I love it. Keep playing the way he played, and I want him to probably get 26. Like, I'll get to that point. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing is that you saw Carmelo Anthony kind of float between 18 and 26, depending on the given night, which is why I think 23, it's about
Right.
where those minutes are going to go. Any last news, notes, tidbits before we get out of here and get ready to go watch this game?
No, man. I think Phoenix, before they got to the finals last year, they were kind of a polarizing team for fans to talk about.
Real? Garbage points? Yeah.
I have people in my mentions like Portland should want Phoenix in round 1, and I always was kind of like, bro,
I remember that.
I'm watching Phoenix like they're a good team. This isn't some weird ass fluke that you're this good.
Yeah.
And their last game in Phoenix, Portland damn near won that game. Dame had like 41. Like that was a really entertaining game. Mm-hmm. And I think it left a lot of Blazer fans going, hey, we're basically right there with Phoenix. Well, Phoenix went to the finals. You lost in round 1 with the other team losing 2 of their top 4 players to injury.
And probably 3 of their top 7. So
quite a bit of difference between that situation. So what I'm looking for really is just, I want to see that competitive fire, right? Like for all the Phoenix showed up for the Laker game, I don't care if it's a back-to-back for Phoenix. Phoenix isn't taking Portland lightly. So Portland needs to kind of show some stuff to us. They need to prove like, hey, man, we legitimately are going to be different. Now, that's not always going to end with a win, but I want to feel like, all right, you're close and or you're winning those ball games. I just really want to see kind of the heart of Portland tonight.
All right. What's your bet tonight? Money line, over? What are we doing?
I think I'm going to go Portland money line.
Okay.
And this will probably be my last dumb bet of the season.
two games in, I'm smashing the overs. 228.
I mean, look, I'm handing you these overs to just come back like, hey, my bet won again and yours didn't. I'm glad you're taking the over though.
Listen, until Portland shows they can stop anybody, if that over is under 230 every freaking time.
How many teams? Hold on, but I'm with you. How many teams in the NBA do you bet the under when Portland plays? Because the only team I think is Oklahoma City.
No, I would say Memphis, OKC, New York, Miami, probably Toronto.
It's very nice of you considering the Knicks just dropped 115 in the Garden against. You know how bad this Blazer defense is.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I think that's less about the defenses and more about their paces of play. That's what I would imagine that those lines stay about the same because it's Portland, but I think that's where you kind of get suckered in. Like, Portland's going to give up that many points. And you're like, yeah, but they're going to play 17, 18 less possessions. They're going to slow this game down.
Yep.
But anytime you see it under 230, I would imagine, you know what, maybe I'll just track this for the season and take a look and see how many times it's under 230 and it actually hits. Because I bet you by the time the season's over with, it's over 50%.
Yeah.
Realistically,
let's keep track of it. Right now, the over is 1-0.
Yeah, it's over is 1-0 at under 230. The second it goes over 230, it's no longer viable.
Stay away. That's a lot of points to be asking the team score that often.
But I mean, the way this team has been, it's just that they've been wet toilet paper, man. And unless they start, shaping that bell curve the other way, it's just the other way around. So we'll get out of here on that. For Brandon Sprague, I'm Danny Marang. This is the Jacked Ramsays pregame show. Make sure you flip it back on. Following the game, we usually go live within about 5-10 minutes of the final horn. We will have you covered tonight after Blazers Suns in the Valley of the Sun. Will the Blazers be winless, or are they going to get their first win of the season against Book, CP, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, and the Phoenix Suns. Flip it back over right after the horn, and we'll have you guys then. Remember, like, rate, review, subscribe. If you're here on YouTube,